All right. Rob Schmitt would say, let's check it out. So let's do it. Welcome into Rob Schmitt Tonight. I'm Bob Brooks. Rob, he has the night off. So let's start tonight off by taking another look at the victory lap President Trump took this week, and I think it is well-deserved. The president today touting the massive success in securing investments for the United States to the tune of trillions of dollars.
In 4 years, Sleepy Joe Biden got less than $1 trillion of new investment into the United States. So in 4 years, he got a lot less than $1 trillion. But with our pro-American economic growth and the use of tariffs, we've already secured commitments for over $18 trillion. In 11 months, we have $18 trillion worth of investment coming into this country.
I mean, that is unheard of. And if you were like me, you have been patiently waiting for the details on what is to come from all of this, right? What are we going to get? Well, in the case of Japan, who has pledged $550 billion, we finally got some clarity. Here it is, Portsmouth, Ohio. You should be celebrating. You're getting the largest natural gas power plant in the world. Texas is getting a $2.1 billion oil export terminal. Georgia's going to get a $600 million diamond grit facility, which is going to be used for manufacturing cutting tools, semiconductors, automotive parts, and oil and gas equipment. It is all kinds of stuff. And I know for many of you watching, this is why you voted for Trump. To make and deliver on deals just like this, to rebuild the American industrial base. The forgotten people of America, forgotten no more. This is why thousands of people would show up at his rallies, like in Michigan and Ohio and Pennsylvania, all across the Rust Belt in Middle America. And it is something the liberal media and coastal elite liberals, they never understood because they've never been outside of their little leftist academia world in their bubbles. You trusted him to make America great again, create jobs, bring back that economic might the country once had that we don't anymore. That is a promise made and a promise kept. And really, these projects, they're just getting started. So here's more of the foreign investment that has been pledged that the president was talking about. The UAE, $1.4 trillion. Qatar, $1.2 trillion. Saudi Arabia, $600 billion. EU firm, $600 billion. India, $500 billion. So you got to sit back and wonder, Joe Biden can only get a fraction of what President Trump did. How did this all happen? How does the president of the United States lean on the international community to make this happen? Well, he used the American consumer, because guess what? We have the most disposable income in the world, and everybody else wants it as leverage. If other countries want access to us, it'll come at a cost. And he posted about that in a Truth Social and kind of a mic drop kind of way, I would say. The scale of these projects are so large, and it could not be done without one very special word, ladies and gentlemen. Bang! There it is. That is tariffs. So I got to ask, do you think Kamala Harris is cutting these kind of deals? I don't. She was vice president, maybe really the acting president because Joe Biden was senile. All you have to do is look at the mess that administration left us all with. We got to live with this. Rampant inflation, cumulative inflation under them, 20% bigger in other areas. The cost of a house, according to the National Realtors Association, went up 31% while they were in office. Even CNN has had to admit groceries. They went up 22% under their watch. Housing and groceries are the two biggest issues for people. Well, go figure, right? A home and food. That's the Democrat record on the economy. That is their legacy. It is a complete disaster. And President Trump has repeatedly called out Joe Biden and Kamala's extreme economic failures, rightfully so, because it is important not to forget this.
What they've done to us, other countries, what they've done, they almost put us out of business. And I'll tell you, if I didn't win this election, and if you had a moron like Kamala or a moron like Sleepy Joe Biden, if you had these people back, our country would have been finished. We wouldn't have had a country.
So why anyone would be considering voting for that party in the midterms in its current state is insane to me. And guess what? Kamala Harris, she's leading in the polls to be the Democrat nominee once again. There it is. She is ahead of Gavin Newsom. You got to render again, it's lunacy. So with that being said, on top of the announcement of the projects being funded by Japan, President Trump, he has had some pretty big wins recently on the economy because it takes time cleaning up a mess that was left behind. So let's start with jobs, everybody. New report just came out, increased by more than 130,000 jobs for January, above the Dow Jones consensus estimate for 55,000, blew out the expectations. So let's look at mortgage rates just this week. U.S. mortgage rates fell to the lowest level since September 2022 as affordability slowly improves. They got to write slowly in there. How about this? Rents. Apartment rents just dropped to the lowest level in 4 years. Let's talk about wages. Real earnings for all private sector workers have outpaced inflation by nearly $1,400, earning back some of the nearly $3,000 we all lost under Joe Biden. And speaking of inflation, right, that is the big one. The annual inflation rate fell to 2.4% in January, below expectations. And here's where it looks even better. A lot of people don't know this. According to the Fed, the branch in Atlanta, they're predicting that the next inflation rate coming in March is going to drop down to that 1.9%, below the target of 2%. So like it or not, the economy is looking a whole lot better than it did when Biden was in office. And President Trump, whether you want to admit it or not, he was right. Tariffs would not raise inflation. Big industry would develop in due time because of his policies. And now we're seeing all of that come to fruition. And yet Democrats and the fake news refuse to even acknowledge the progress the president has made in turning the economy around. So here was President Trump down in Georgia on that again tonight.
Adding $9 trillion in value to your savings. I added $9 trillion, and your retirement accounts and 401ks are at the highest level they've ever been. And then I have to listen to the fake news talking about affordability. Affordability. Do you notice? What word have you not heard over the last 2 weeks? Affordability. Because I've won. I've won affordability.
And he's right. You're not hearing Democrats talk about it that much anymore. Really just ICE, because that's the only thing they got going for them right now. And I will admit, yes, affordability in this country, much tougher than it used to be. But that is the lasting legacy of the Biden-Harris administration and Democrat policies. And now they kind of want to campaign on it, right? They say they're going to. They're going to fix the issue that they created. You cannot be serious. If you want a case study on this, look at New York City, right? They're leading the way with Democrats and Democrat socialism. Mayor Zohran Mamdani, he wants to add $11 billion in spending to the budget here and potentially raise property taxes by 9.5% in order to make it happen. Take more of your money so he can give it away. Again, that is called socialism. And he is a socialist. And then it'll be squandered or stolen or fraud. We also can't forget what the Democrat policy is on the border either. This is really important for the midterms. That is, there is no border. All are welcomed into our country, including career criminals who have killed numerous Americans. That also had an impact on housing. It's called a housing shortage. When you have 20 million people coming to the country, they got to live somewhere, right? And according to the Secretary of HUD, Scott Turner, states like California, New York, Biden's border crisis accounted for 100% of all rental price growth. President Trump also commenting on that tonight.
One of the biggest factors driving up housing costs was the Biden border invasion, which brought in millions and millions of people flooding into your communities, getting government subsidies on homes. Foreign-born workers now make up over 1/3 of all demand for Georgia housing, driving up rent and housing costs. Not one person in the last 8 months has come through our border. So rent prices have hit 4-year lows based on what we've done by bringing down mortgage rates. We've also slashed the yearly cost of new mortgages by $4,000 a year.
Look, the president, he's taking a victory lap, like I said, and he should. What an accomplishment. What a disaster he was left with. And I don't say this lightly. You would have to be insane if you think Democrats are going to fix affordability based on what we saw and what happened the last time that they had power in D.C. I think this is really a no-brain decision. Peter Navarro, Trump's senior counselor for trade and manufacturing. He joins us now. Peter, it's a pleasure. Thanks for coming on, sir. So I saw you just posted on X that the affordability correction is in. It looks like it to me based on all things I'm saying. What do you think?
Yeah, that was a really good summer. You hit all the bases across the board. Let me drill down on one particular aspect of this. I had a piece in Real Clear Markets today that reflects on the residential housing construction that's come in. Bob, the housing cost for Americans is the biggest part of their budget. So if you want to basically win the affordability battle, that's a good place to start. And we are winning. And if you start simply with the border security, which is what I like to do, is connect the dots between first sealing the border and then deporting illegals, both voluntary and mandatory, which is what we're doing. Now, here's the statistic I want every American to understand. 1% increase in rents for every 1 million illegals that cross our border. In the 4 years of Biden, we had 20 million. So rents went up nationally 20% because Joe Biden left that border open. And it was worse because that's the national number. If you go into the blue sanctuary cities,
that's
the
right,
New Yorks and the Chicagos and places where they're electing crazy guys like Mamdani trying to capitalize on that, they were even higher. So what we're seeing, and it's a beautiful thing, but it takes time, what we're seeing now is if we deported thousands upon thousands upon thousands of illegal aliens already, we're seeing rents go down dramatically in a lot of cities across America. Things are stabilizing. And it takes a while for that to work through the chain, Bob, but we're seeing it all around the country. Now, the important thing for the American people, if you look at polling, now politics is a difficult game to play. And the border is not in the polls showing up like it did during the election that Donald Trump just won, because Donald Trump closed the border.
It took months to close it down.
But we have not won that fight until we get rid of, we deport the 20 million that came who are not just driving up our rents, but who took our jobs, who depressed our wages. So housing is doing a lot better because of our border security policy. People have to understand that when they support what we're trying to do with deportations. Now, the other thing we're doing, I mean, we tackle this macro thing one by one at a micro level. Donald Trump has helped with $200 billion for Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac. What does that do? That's basically going to help get the mortgage rates down. We are on the cusp now, Bob, of going from 30-year fixed above 6% to breaking through that threshold. And when we do that, that's going to unlock all these people who are locked into their homes because they've got fixed rate mortgages, they can't move. And at the same time, it's going to unlock the single family people who want to buy. And then what does that do? All of that changes the dynamics of the whole marketplace. So if the Democrats want to fight the 2026 midterms on affordability, I say bring it on, because the American people understand two things. One is that the Democrats caused the inflation that they're suffering from. And two, it's not even a close call as to who can be better at dealing with inflation. And by the way, the equation is twofold. It's not just getting the rate of inflation down, and in some cases getting absolute prices down. It's also driving real wages up. And that's happening under Donald Trump, just like it did in the first term and did not happen with Joe Biden. Bob, it's really good to be with you tonight.
Peter, excellent explanation. It was a pleasure. I wish we had more time to talk, and I'm with you. Inflation down, wages up. I don't think Democrats are actually going to run as hard on affordability because things are starting to look so good. They're going to have to figure out some kind of new narrative here. Peter Navarro, it's a pleasure. Thank you.
Okay. All right, my brother.
All right, coming up, Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, the disgraced former Prince of England. He was arrested this morning for his connection to Jeffrey Epstein. So we're going to have all the details on that next.
Federal agencies urge every family to have an emergency radio. During any disaster, electrical power may get cut. The emergency radio gives you the vital information you need. Newsmax wants you to have the Dynamo Emergency Band Radio. It doesn't need batteries and works in any emergencies. It retails for $30. You can get it with the free offer. Call or go online and get the emergency radio today. Your life may depend on it.
Ready for relief?
I just want relief.
I needed relief.
You just want relief. Like you just want it to go away.
You need the Signal Relief Patch.
We all hurt, whether it's our neck, back, knees, or shoulders. Pain keeps you from doing the things that matter most. In a recent study, 85% of people felt relief.
As a surgeon, I put it on, and I can't explain why it works. I can just tell you, it does work.
Some people think this is just in my head, but I know that it works. It's working.
The Signal Relief Patch for me offered up independence.
The Signal Relief Patch for me actually means pain relief.
With a Signal Patch, I've been able to sleep, walk, and work.
Relief. That's what the Signal Patch gave me.
It was phenomenal. Why aren't more people trying this?
Join the thousands who have experienced relief, and it comes with a money-back guarantee. Get your patch today.
You woke up with a sore throat and a low-grade fever. You know you are getting sick, so here's your choices. You can get sicker and miss work. Try to see a doctor this week or sit hours in a crowded waiting room at urgent care.
I have a smarter option for you. Open your medical emergency kit. Match your symptoms to doctor-recommended prescription in your booklet and take the right meds now and get well faster.
This is not a first aid kit. It's like having an urgent care in your home. It includes doctor-prescribed medications to treat over 39 medical issues like respiratory infections, strep throat, pneumonia, UTIs, and more.
No waiting to see the doctor and no standing in line at the pharmacy. It's right here.
Every home should have at least one medical emergency kit, and here's how to order.
Order online and save $45. Your kit to treat dozens of common and serious illnesses is rushed to your door. Visit urgentcarekit.com/news, promo code NEWS. That's urgentcarekit.com/news, promo code NEWS.
Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, the BBC understands that he has been arrested.
News came from the UK, darling.
A stunning royal arrest.
Stunning news out of London. Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, the former Prince Andrew, has been arrested, presumably in connection with his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein.
The allegation, Craig, is misconduct in public office.
The web keeps getting bigger and bigger. A historic blemish for the British monarchy. Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, the disgraced former Prince of the UK and brother to King Charles, arrested this morning at his home in Norfolk, England on his 66th birthday. It happened because of his connections to and his relationship with convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. Now, the allegation against Andrew is suspicion of misconduct while in public office, accusing him of sharing confidential information with Epstein while serving as Britain's trade envoy. And if convicted, carries a maximum life prison sentence. Now, Andrew, he was released under investigation after he was held in custody for several hours. Pictured there, you can see him leaving, reclined in his vehicle after leaving the station. King Charles, he has responded to his brother's arrest, expressing his deep concern and saying the law must take its course. In 2019, Virginia Giuffre told NBC that Epstein trafficked her to Andrew when she was underage. And we're told that she committed suicide, despite Virginia Giuffre publicly saying before her death that she would never commit suicide. Now, President Trump had this to say about Andrew's arrest while aboard Air Force One this afternoon.
I think it's a shame. I think it's very sad. I think it's so bad for the royal family. His brother, who's obviously coming to our country very soon, and he's a fantastic man, the king. So I think it's a very sad thing.
Ryan Grimm, he's a reporter from Drop Site News. He joins us now. Ryan, pleasure to have you on. So, me personally, I think the more the files come out, you get to go through them. There's millions of them, the more we learn. So, your reaction to Andrew's arrest, and you think others are going to go down?
Yeah, and I think people, when they saw that he was arrested, think that he's arrested for some crime associated with the sex trafficking. But in fact,
it's about trade here. This particular,
it's about trade.
Yes,
he was named the UK trade envoy, and he served in that role for about a decade while he was very close with Epstein from the early 2000s until about 2010 or 2011. And in the files that have been released, you see him forwarding confidential trade information, kind of government reports from his travels to, I think, Vietnam, Singapore. He sent some information about Afghanistan, mineral deposits or other opportunities that he had. Jeffrey Epstein was very heavily involved with the commodities trade, and particularly the kind of gray market commodities trade. Moving. You've got shell companies that own this mine, but have to cooperate with this warlord to get this. Like that. That's the kind of project you would get a Jeffrey Epstein into, and so you have Prince Andrew kind of, sharing this non-public information, which
kind of sounds like the stuff you don't want the general public to know. You go through a Jeffrey Epstein type character.
Exactly. And this is criminal. Like you're not supposed to, as UK envoy, is supposed to trade this. What we learned, interestingly, is that Tony Blair was urged against appointing Prince Andrew to this role. At the time, Prince Andrew's reputation was in the gutter. He was referred to, even at that time, as Randy Andy. Like, this was a guy that everybody knew, like, if you give him this job, he's just going to chase women, party and play golf. Like, that's what Tony Blair was told. Peter Mandelson is the one that, according to the reporting, really pushed him hard and said, no, give Prince Andrew the opportunity. Mandelson, we now is also, was very close with Trump and with Epstein, and is himself now facing, potential criminal liability for his own sharing of non-public financial information from the government with Epstein.
So it kind of sounds like, everyone warned him, you don't want to do this, don't put him here. He's Prince Andrew, so they did it anyways. And then the dirty little secret in the back was Jeffrey Epstein lurking in the background.
Yeah, and it's not just, he's Prince Andrew. It's why did Peter Mandelson want him in that position?
So that all needs to be looked at as well.
Yeah, because Mandelson and Epstein are close as well. So this is a network of people who are all partying together, all engaged in this kind of behavior, it appears, and then also are kind of fighting for each other behind the scenes.
Boy, the network, the web with Jeffrey Epstein, we always talk about it at work. It just keeps going and going. One of the most bizarre stories and sad stories in recent history. Ryan Grim, we got to leave it there. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right, coming up, President Trump, he hosted his first Board of Peace meeting earlier today where he announced the stages of the Gaza ceasefire, what's to come next. He also hinted at where the U.S. stands with Iran and possible military action. We're going to talk about it next, coming up.
Go ahead. Make my day.
Actor, Oscar-winning director, and even a mayor, he redefined cool. From humble beginnings to Hollywood icon, he became the face of good guy toughness. Watch American Legend, the Clint Eastwood story.
As a neurologist, my patients are often concerned with age-related memory decline. I recommend Cunol Brain Health with 2 powerful, high-absorption ingredients clinically shown to improve memory, focus, attention, and more. Cunol, the brand I trust.
So, here is a before of my stomach before Sonobello, and this is after.
This year, don't just lose weight, lose stubborn fat and sagging extra skin permanently at Sonobello.
I had some loose, wiggly skin, and it is no longer there thanks to Sonobello.
Our expert surgeons use micro laser technology to safely target and remove your diet-resistant fat and tighten loose skin permanently.
I wanted the results of the tummy tuck, but not the downtime. I had a 10 out of 10 experience.
We've helped over 300,000 people transform, and we're proud to be America's #1 cosmetic surgery specialist.
In just one visit, Sonobello got rid of my love handles and my belly fat.
You want that flat stomach? You go get that flat stomach.
Call Sonobello.
Get in there for your free consultation. Do this for you.
Schedule your free, no-obligation consultation. Our flexible payment options make it easy to get started today.
And sold to Carvana. Ugh, that was too convenient.
It's a great offer. What's wrong, John?
I set aside a week to sell my car, Clarence. I haven't had free time since 2006.
Isn't free time a good thing?
They pick it up tomorrow and they pay me on the spot. What am I supposed to do with all this time?
You could visit a museum.
All week?
You could learn Italian.
Ho venduto la mia macchina a Carvana.
I just sold my car to Carvana, too. What are we going to do?
He gets it. What are we going to do with all this time? Sell your car to Carvana today.
Hi there, I'm Dean Heskin, President and CEO of Swiss America. Do you know which investment has outperformed almost every other asset class since the beginning of last year? And that Goldman Sachs research is now forecasting to reach further heights. That's right, it's gold. Central banks around the world continue to buy gold at record levels due to economic turmoil, foreign conflicts, and a weakening U.S. economy plagued by debt. If you're concerned how to protect yourself as our financial system weakens, our team at Swiss America has a solution. For over 40 years, we've helped people just like you purchase precious metals for home delivery and for your IRAs. Don't miss out before this next big price jump. Call or text Swiss America at the number on your screen to receive your free portfolio review and a copy of The Timeless Truth About Gold and Silver. Let us show you how easy it is to safeguard your money. Call or text Swiss America today.
This President's Day, Pure Talk is honoring Lincoln and Jackson by offering unlimited talk, text, and plenty of data for just $25 a month. Meanwhile, Big Wireless is acting like it's Ben Franklin Day, charging families hundreds of dollars for the same 5G service. What's up with that? Benjamin Franklin wasn't even a president. Stop paying Big Wireless big money for the same service and hang on to your Benjamins by switching to an American wireless company that is truly unprecedented. Pure Talk.
All right, welcome back in. I'm Bob Brooks, filling in for Rob this evening. President Trump, his Board of Peace, held its very first meeting today with the next stages of the Gaza ceasefire as the focus. Trump announcing that board members, they have pledged more than $5 billion to rebuild the war-torn territory, and the United States to contribute $10 billion to the group's efforts. The president also announcing the deployment of thousands of international troops to Gaza. They're going to serve as a stabilization force, like a buffer between Israel and Hamas, but of course, all of that hinges on if Hamas will disarm. Victoria Coates, the Vice President of National Security at the Heritage Foundation. She joins us now. Victoria, it's a pleasure. Always good to see you. So let's start with the Board of Peace and maybe bringing peace on earth as opposed to usually we see what we see out of the UN, which is not much action.
Well, Bob, good to be with you. No, I think the UN just has now an 80-year record of failure. Attempt after attempt to solve the Israel-Palestinian issue has failed. It hasn't made any progress. It's made the situation worse. It's it's encouraged Hamas through elements like UNRWA. It's radicalized the Palestinians. And so I think President Trump should be given his chance. And what I kept thinking today, seeing all those very serious people, both heads of state and very senior advisors to important countries sitting around pledging actual money, is what happens if this actually works? How many heads in Turtle Bay are going to explode? How many career diplomats in Foggy Bottom are going to have their heads explode because Trump succeeded where they failed because he's practical, he's a businessman, and he wants results?
Yeah, well, he's also stopped 8 wars, 9 wars at this point. So maybe he does know what he's doing when brokering peace between countries. Real quick, we got 30 seconds here. Iran, we've got 2 aircraft carriers headed to the region. USS Gerald Ford, it's on the way. Plenty of other warships. What happens?
Well, I think the president has all of his options. He wants diplomacy to work. His efforts to get to a deal are sincere, but he's not going to take just any deal. He needs what he calls a meaningful deal, and his patience isn't infinite. We have more firepower built up in the Middle East now than we had in the Caribbean for the Maduro exercise. So this is very, very serious. The Iranians should take the deal, but if they don't, he has every option on the table.
No, I would say it's serious. You don't sell ships like that halfway around the world to not be serious about potentially using them. Victoria Coates, good to see you.
Thank you, Bob.
All right, on to this. One of the biggest stories of the 20th century, the fall of the Soviet Union, starts with the battle for Grenada. Newsmax's very own John Bachman, he joins us now to talk about his new book on the critical time in history. The book is called A Turning Point, How Reagan Liberated Grenada and Won the Cold War. John, good to see you.
Great to see you too, Bob.
Yeah, talk about it.
Well, this book tells a story that hasn't really been told a lot, an important missing chapter from the Reagan administration. This story is often overshadowed by what happened that same week, which was the Marine barracks bombing in Beirut, Lebanon. But that same week, Ronald Reagan decided to go in and rescue more than 600 American medical students who were stranded in Grenada. There was a communist coup. An actual more radical communist had assassinated his friend, Maurice Bishop, who was the communist leader of Grenada. This guy's name was Bernard Coward. He took over. And what was happening there was these American medical students, they were under threat of a shoot-on-sight curfew. Ronald Reagan and his staff knew the urgency of this, and so they went in and rescued the Americans. They also restored democratic leadership there without any kind of nation-building or regime change type operations that we saw so often under prior administrations after Ronald Reagan. It also tells a story about how he built a team around him in the Oval Office that gave him the advice that he needed to make these types of decisions. It's a fascinating story, and I'm honored to bring it to the American public.
Well, John, it's always a pleasure to speak with you and watch what you're doing. Big fan here, and I hope everybody checks out that book. As we talked earlier this afternoon, President Reagan, just no tolerance there for communism, and President Trump here in our hemisphere kind of doing the same thing. Okay, it is a true story of how a tiny island, a bold decision, and a tense showdown quietly shifted the balance of the Cold War. Read it like a thriller. Remember it like history. Get Turning Point today for a free special offer. You can call, go online, and check out John Bachman's new book there. All right, coming up, Stephen Colbert, guess what? He claims he's a victim now over censorship over the FCC's equal time rule. Well, the FCC is also launching an investigation into The View. Maybe they're not following the rules either. Something to do with election engineering. That is next with Ed Henry and Rick Leventhal.
Information. Truth. Is freedom. Is Newsmax. It's real news for real people.
Whoa, 90% off? I have to purchase now. My phone!
That was a scam link.
Try this one. We installed PCmatic.
PCmatic blocked ransomware before threats can strike.
It's 100% made in America security.
Trusted by homes, businesses, governments, and now you. Stop guessing.
Start blocking.
Get
PCmatic.
He's breathing.
Okay. Go again.
Nearly 5,000 people die from choking each year. That's frightening. I'm Dr. Ben Carson.
And I'm Arthur Lee. Well, there are ways to help prevent choking. Accidents do happen. That's why I invented the Life Pack.
Anyone can use this device, and it can save a life in seconds.
Just place, push, and pull. It's that simple. Please order one for your home, office, car, anywhere you eat.
Go to lifehack.net or call 877-543-3822.
We're down here in Wimberley, Texas, to build a smart home for Dustin Weber.
We want to welcome the Weber family to Wimberley.
Yesterday was just amazing.
The thought that has been put into these smart homes, they've thought of everything that will make his life better.
This home allows me the freedom to experience my children, taking them to bed. This home allows me the freedom to not slip and fall in the bathroom. It is a life-changing experience.
Let's face it, folks, car repair costs are not going down anytime soon. In fact, they're only getting worse. Protect your hard-earned dollars with a money-saving plan for your out-of-warranty vehicle with one call to CarShield. Plans offer protections on big items like your car's transmission, engine, AC, and thousands of parts and systems. Call now. Waiting could cost you thousands.
Call CarShield now for your free quote and to lock in your rate with their price lock guarantee. Call 800-213-0458.
My heart has experienced life-changing wins, losses, and countless miles. To keep living at my speed, I trust Cunol CoQ10. CoQ10 is the #1 cardiologist-recommended supplement for heart health. Cunol, the brand I trust.
Some wireless companies say that they stand for something. What exactly do they stand for, and why won't they say it out loud? Let me tell you what Patriot Mobile stands for. They stand for the lives of the unborn. They stand for the Second Amendment and the right to protect yourself and your family. They stand for our veterans and first responders who sacrifice so much for our freedom. Make the switch to Patriot Mobile today and support a company that doesn't just say they stand for something, but one that stands for the things that matter the most.
Don't kibble your dog.
Oh, hey, Dr. Marty.
Hey, back.
But what's wrong with this? It's premium stuff.
Let's check it out. It's still kibble, which means it's ultra-processed at extremely high temperatures that destroy the nutrients in the food. But at Dr. Marty, we gently freeze-dried premium meats, fruit, and vegetables, locking in their nutrients.
Never kibbled.
You got it, kid, and they're gonna love it.
It is not, generally speaking, unruly.
The dehumanizing rhetoric of Adolf Hitler is once again alive and well.
This version of Biden is the best Biden ever.
A beeper went off in the audience.
See if you can call my writers on that damn thing. You know you're not doing well when a guy calls for the paramedics during the monologue.
Donald Trump is a fascist. I can finally speak unvarnished truth to power and say what I really think about Donald Trump. Go yourself.
Well, that's not very nice. Modern late-night TV isn't comparable to the days of Johnny Carson. As you just saw right there, what used to be high-quality entertainment before bed has turned into nothing more than a bunch of liberals bashing Republicans. That's all it is. To the point, late night is now a full-blown propaganda arm for the Democrat Party. Head of the pack, you just saw him, CBS Stephen Colbert, whose show is set to end soon because he's not funny enough to make any money and is currently lashing out at his new bosses on his way out the door. Here's what happened. He's claiming his bosses at CBS refused to let him air his recent interview with Texas Democrat Senate candidate James Tallarico because of censorship demands from the Trump FCC. In reality, the network simply informed Colbert if he had let Tallarico on, he would have to give Tallarico's opponents equal time on the show because of the FCC's equal time rule, which was enacted by Congress nearly 100 years ago. Now, FCC Chairman Brendan Carr says this is why the American people have more trust in gas station sushi than they do in Colbert.
I think yesterday was a perfect encapsulation of why the American people have more trust in gas station sushi than they do in the national news media. And this was very plainly an effort ginned up to get clicks and to raise money. And you guys ate it up like slop. What's so ironic about it is, had they gone down the path of complying with the equal time provisions here, it would have meant more airtime for more Democrats to say whatever those Democrats wanted. So again, this is part of the broader hoax that too many in the fake news media simply fell for, hook, line, and sinker.
And he's right. And because of this little stunt pulled by Colbert, James Tallarico has since raised, get this, north of $2.5 million for his campaign. So maybe someone should investigate Colbert for election interference. And I'm sure Tallarico's Democrat primary opponent, Jasmine Crockett, she's not happy about this. In fact, Colbert putting his thumb on the scale like this for a white man over a black woman kind of seems pretty racist. I don't know. That's just what it seems like. We're joined now by the host of the Big Take at 5 p.m. Eastern right here on Newsmax, Ed Henry, along with N2 host of the Leventhal Report, Rick Leventhal. Gentlemen, good to see you both. Ed, I'm going to start with you here. So it just seems like, boy, these Democrats, Colbert, late night TV, they've had the run of the muck for all these years. You just can't do that, and they hate it.
Yes, because it is election interference. Here's why. Tallarico is seen as a more moderate Democrat who could potentially flip this big Texas Senate seat, which is a big deal in the midterms, from red Republican potentially to blue, whereas Crockett has like no chances at all because she's so far left. That's why Colbert wants Tallarico on and not Crockett, because he wants to promote the moderate Dem. And as you just pointed out, he's raising all kinds of money out of this. And by the way, a week earlier, The View at ABC did the same darn thing. They were putting Tallarico on and wouldn't have Crockett on. That's the real reason Brendan Carr stepped in. I talked to him about this off the air, and that's why The View right now is under an investigation by the FCC. It's been under the radar, but I think in the end, ABC may just cut ties and say we're done with dealing with The View, because they are mucking around in elections and not following the equal time rules, as you point out. And that's the bottom line. They're not playing by the rules because they're trying to get Trump, and they got caught. Very, very sneaky behavior here. Rick, your thoughts?
Well, on behalf of gas station sushi, I would just like to say I'm very offended. There must be a lobby for gas station sushi somewhere. This is more of the same that we've been seeing for years now, Bob, where these late night shows and The View and bleeding into some of the other shows on these networks are gone full liberal, full Trump bashing, and they're using these airwaves to do it that are regulated by the FCC. And there are rules on that road. So if you want to have this show and you want to get political, you got to present both sides. And it doesn't appear that any of these hosts, are capable of doing it.
So let's talk more about The View, Ed, as you brought up. I want everyone to know what's exactly going on with this. Beyond it being just left-wing propaganda and garbage, the FCC chairman, Brendan Carr, he says the agency has enforcement action underway against the show after having Tallarico and Crockett as guests on the program. But where's some of the other candidates? Where's the Republicans? So, Ed, further expand on that for me here.
Yeah, because there's a Republican primary as well with Republican Senator John Cornyn and then Ken Paxton, the Republican state attorney general. It's gotten a little bitter. Donald Trump, the president, has stayed out of it so far. And a lot of Republicans are looking at that. Who's going to be a better candidate in November? That's the whole reason why Colbert and The View are mucking around here, as we said before, because they see an opportunity of a Republican civil war. Maybe if they get a moderate Democrat, they can make that a Democrat Senate seat. And then the Republicans are in real trouble in November if all of a sudden that seat is a normally safe Republican is in play. So that's why The View is under investigation, because they are messing around with politics and they're not offering equal time to either Cornyn or Paxton. It's not just about equal time for the Democrats. You got to let all the candidates on your shows. And these lefties don't want to do it. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, when we really hash it out and talk about it like this, it seems very obvious. You understand why the FCC is doing what they're doing here. Rick, final thoughts when it comes to this.
Well, you know, you remember back before the election, I forget which show it was, maybe all of them had Kamala Harris on. They didn't have Donald Trump on. They were trying to sway the outcome of the election, and they've been doing that for a very long time now. The 95, 98% negative coverage of Republicans, negative coverage of the president, it adds up, and they're trying to create an atmosphere where voters are turned off by Donald Trump and want to vote for his opponent. And that, you know, if not for Kamala Harris not being able to finish sentences or make any sense, she might have had a shot at winning because they gave her the platforms. They gave her every opportunity to do it, but she fumbled the ball. She couldn't get it over the goal line, and we're all better off for it. But you know what? Enforcing these rules, I think, is important. Just make it fair. Just keep it even, and everyone's going to be okay, and everyone's going to get both sides of the story, which is what they should be getting every day and night.
That's all we're asking for, right? Just keep it fair. Give everybody free time, the fair time, the same amount of time. But as we have just pointed out, not the case. And we know CBS, they doctored one of Kamala's sound bites here and then got sued for it. It gets crazy with this.
They got caught.
Yep. All right. Ed, Rick, good to see you both. Thanks, guys.
Good to see you.
Thank you.
Okay, coming up, Obama and staffers living in their own bubble. Well, we know they do that. Never saw Trump becoming president. Maybe even cried over it? Those are the reports. Obama was crying. That's next in News from the Left.
Balance of Nature is a wonderful product. Whether you're a teenager or whether you're older, you don't have to be in your 70s to take the product. I recommend it to all of my friends. I'm very grateful that I started on Balance of Nature.
Start your journey with Balance of Nature supplements today. Go to balanceofnature.com and subscribe and save with free shipping and our money-back guarantee. That's 1-800-246-8751. Don't wait. Now's the time to take action.
Your data is like a single domino. The moment it's stolen, it starts a chain reaction that puts the information that guards your assets at risk. 1 in 3 Americans have been a victim of identity theft. Are you willing to risk it?
When I saw zeros on that screen as my bank account balance, I went to immediate panic.
$21,000 just gone.
I opened my account and $30,000 is missing. Like $30,000. I have no idea what to do.
If your personal information is stolen, are you prepared to pick up the pieces alone? LifeLock is the leader in identity theft protection and restoration.
Once LifeLock got involved, everything changed.
With LifeLock, if your identity is stolen, they'll step in and fix it so you don't have to, guaranteed. Our highly trained U.S.-based restoration specialists contact institutions, dispute fraudulent charges, close compromised accounts, and even procure legal support far beyond the capabilities of your bank or credit card company.
LifeLock pursued this case
further than I ever would have imagined.
If you call right now, you'll get LifeLock for just $9.99 a month for your first year. And as extra protection, all LifeLock memberships include the $1 Million Protection Package. Our members receive reimbursement for stolen funds and personal expenses, like lost wages, as well as coverage for lawyers and experts up to $3 million in total.
When the bank refused to reimburse my stolen money, the $1 Million Protection Package came through for me.
Our restoration guarantee and $1 Million Protection Package are included in all memberships with no additional fees.
I think it's natural to think that you can do this on your own. You can't. You need an expert in your corner.
Call 1-800-360-9220 and use promo code TV35 or go to lifelock.com/TV35 to join today.
I'm a martial artist, a skydiver, a pilot, and all of them require your feet to work. Get up in the morning, and it felt like I was standing on marbles on my heel. When I went into the Good Feet store, the fitting was personalized. It was all about me. You put in the arch supports, and your day becomes better, and the sun shines, the unicorns run by, and, it's a good life. I'm Randy, and that's my Good Feet story.
See for yourself with a free personalized arch support fitting at the Good Feet store.
All right, welcome back in. Time now for news from the left. You're going to like this one. A new piece from Peter Baker of the New York Times revealing that Obama and his team never thought that President Trump would actually be a serious candidate to, of course, then become the president of the United States. Now, the piece titled, "Obama Took on a Recession, Healthcare, in Iraq. What he didn't see coming was Trump." Now, Obama aides described Trump as a con man, a clown, and a laughingstock. Barack and his staffers having delusions of grandeur, thinking their policies were so popular with the American people. But in reality, we all know they lived in their own bubble, as I said earlier tonight, completely out of touch with millions of Americans. Former President Obama and Secretary Josh Ernst scoffing at Trump and his ideas, saying that they were relegated to the dustbin of history. We're all in the dustbin. And that's not all. Real Clear Investigation senior reporter Paul Sperry, he's reporting that President Obama and his national security advisor, Susan Rice, were so distraught after Trump won in 2016, they literally broke down and cried in front of the White House staff. They were in there crying, adding after all they built, they feared their accomplishments were at risk of being torn down by a con man and a clown. Ergo, Trump, he had to be stopped. And now you know why things transpired after President Trump actually got into office. Tim Graham, executive editor at MRC Newsbusters. Hogan Gidley, former national press secretary from the Trump campaign. They join us now. Good to see you both. Hogan, I'm going to start with you. Your reaction to that, President Obama, Susan Rice, they're crying because President Trump won. They didn't think he was legit. Boy, did they not have the balls.
Well, also, it's funny to me the way it was phrased, that after all Obama had built, what in the world did he build? I mean, nobody was better off at all. I'm shocked. And after Donald Trump just got rid of this last EPA regulation, which was unconstitutional and ridiculous, there's nothing left of Barack Obama except a shell of a person who was a failure as a president. Listen, it's common for people to cry after elections, those who are staffers. It's not all that common for the actual principal.
Yeah, I thought you were going to say, for them. The commander-in-chief's crying.
The president of the United States crying as well, but it also lets you know the hurt they felt, and it makes you wonder, what lengths would you go to after that to try and get something done to hurt the person that you feel as though should not have won the election? How high up did all these scandals go against Donald Trump? Did they go all the way to Obama? When you read stories like this, it makes you really wonder.
Well, a lot of that has been brought to light after a series of investigations. Here, Tim, your thoughts.
I thought he was going to say, how far would we go to get the video? Everybody could watch Susan Rice and Obama cry. We did have that video of like Ben Rhodes, the Obama aide, being extremely glum. That's always kind of fun. Yeah, for everybody who loses, the other side wins. And look, it was quite common for everybody who's a snob in liberal politics to think there's no way this clown's gonna win. That was part of what made election night so humorous, is that all of these smug people were put in their place. So it's a fun memory. It's a fun story for us to read.
It's also fun to see, or it's a nice reminder, at least for me, to know just, man, they are so far out of touch. with millions of people in this country. They just never go and get out of the coastal elite areas. It's kind of ridiculous here. I also want to point this out. This is funny. ESPN, very woke. They're planning on replacing a staple of their programming, Sunday Night Baseball, guys. And they're going to replace it with Women's Sports Sundays, which is going to cover the WNBA and National Women's Soccer League. And I understand that ESPN, they don't have the rights to Sunday Night Baseball. NBC does. But, Hogan, you think it's a good idea to put on the WNBA instead of Sunday Night Baseball, America's pastime?
Well, as you well know, being in television news, what matters is whether or not you can tick a rating, thus make money, get the advertisers you need to stay on the air. I don't know if this show is going to take off the way they hope it will, because the sport itself is not watched by anybody. No one attends the games either. So putting it on television in hopes that you're going to get more advertisers and make more money for that time slot seems a little odd. But, you know, I don't work at ESPN. They're a private company. They can do what they want. But again, I think the over-under in the betting markets for how long this show actually lasts would be something interesting to watch, too.
Yeah, I think the key word's they hope. It's the woke movement. They want and hope people are going to take to it and force us to watch women's sports, even though the WNBA is just a crap product. I mean, it is. I watch them shoot air balls, and it's just the way it goes. Tim, your thoughts on that?
Well, obviously, the rights to these games are far below what Major League Baseball was charging. Now, if you decided, okay, this is basically going to be Caitlin Clark games on Sunday night, that actually might be successful based on how much lower the cost of airing the games is. People will watch Caitlin Clark. I'm not sure about everybody else.
Yes, if she played every Sunday night, but the reality is she's not going to. Hey, but like you said, Hogan, they got a company. They run it how they see fit. Maybe they make money, maybe they don't. Got her on.
They could call it Sunday Night Fever.
Yeah, they could. Yeah. Tim, Hogan, good to see you both.
You bet.
All right, coming up, we're going to hit the streets asking New Yorkers how they would assess the job Mayor Mamdani, the socialist, has done so far. That is coming up.
You know Rob Finnerty. He's smart, bold, and stands strong for your values. Rob is fighting for you. Watch Finnerty weeknights only on Newsmax.
Ready for relief? I just want relief. I needed relief.
You just want relief. Like you just want it to go away.
You need the Signal Relief Patch.
We all hurt, whether it's our neck, back, knees, or shoulders. Pain keeps you from doing the things that matter most. In a recent study, 85% of people felt relief.
As a surgeon, I put it on, and I can't explain why it works. I can just tell you, it does work.
Some people think this is just in my head, but I know that it works. It's working.
The Signal Relief Patch for me offered up independence.
The Signal Relief Patch for me actually means pain relief.
With a Signal Patch, I've been able to sleep, walk, and work.
Relief. That's what the Signal Patch gave me.
It was phenomenal. Why aren't more people trying this?
Join the thousands who have experienced relief, and it comes with a money-back guarantee. Get your patch today.
The Wall Street Journal said silver could be the trade of a decade.
Eric Sprott said $250 to $500 an ounce is entirely possible.
Gold recently surpassed its inflation-adjusted all-time high. Silver's inflation-adjusted all-time high is $209 an ounce.
And silver went up 1,300% from 1974 to 1980. Silver's got a lot of room to run.
Give Patriot Gold Group a call at 1-800-778-4156.
Patriot Gold Group is Consumer Affairs' top-rated gold and silver dealer nationwide. The only firm nationwide where you, the client, work directly with an owner. Home of the No Fee for Life IRA. See how easy it is to protect your IRA with physical gold and silver.
Call now. 1-800-778-4156.
The future of real estate is here. Real estate tokenization turns property ownership into digital tokens on the blockchain, allowing assets to be divided, traded, and managed with ease. Through fractional ownership, stop trading stocks, start trading skyscrapers. For the first time, you can buy, sell, and trade ownership in income-producing real estate as easily as a share of Apple stock. Your portfolio's next power play is here. TheInvestorsPool.com.
I'm Yalmer Heinrich. I'm in the nutritional business, primarily selling plant-derived minerals. Now, after being in this business for 43 years, owning a cancer hospital in Mexico, and associating with some of the most knowledgeable nutritional people in the world, I came to this conclusion. The world is sick due to a lack of minerals in our food, which is caused by a lack of minerals in topsoil. There is an incredible and proven nutritional product on the market that can overcome this problem. It's known as Immuno-150. This unusual food supplement contains 70 plant-derived minerals and 80 additional nutrients. There's nothing like it. You can learn everything about Immuno-150 by watching the 3 videos on our website. If you're interested, you can order online or call the number on the screen. Now, Immuno-150 is different, it's real, it's powerful, it's helped thousands, and we believe it enjoys the highest reorder rate in the industry.
Okay, welcome back in. Finally tonight, it's been a little over a month since New York City's Marxist mayor was officially sworn in. Zohran Mamdani thinks cuts to the NYPD is going to help get the city's budget back on track, and that is why he plans on canceling, get this, 5,000 new police officer hires. So we hit the streets to ask New Yorkers if they want to defund the police.
Mamdani, he's pitching some cuts to the NYPD budget right now. People are saying he wants to defund the police. Do you think that would be a good or a bad thing?
Bad.
Probably a bad thing.
I think it's crazy. I don't think it's a good thing for the city.
I believe we should have a separate unit. Police, I don't know what you would call it, but a separate unit that would deal with mental health issues.
There's like this conception of like him trying to defund the police and all of that.
Considering he's the worst thing to happen to New York since 9/11, that's a really horrible idea.
I don't think it's a good plan. I think we need the police to protect the population.
I think we should have our police officers, fully equipped with what they need to handle in the streets, like who are you gonna call when something goes down?
Are you for defunding the police?
No, we don't defund the police. Just make certain arrangements so that everything is taken care of, just like he's doing to redirect funds to, caring for the homeless.
20 homeless did just die outside with
but it was really a bad winter, you got to admit.
I've been in this city for 60 years now, and this is the worst I've seen. I mean, this snowstorm is an example of it. I mean, they've forgotten how to plow snow.
Do you feel safe with the crime in here?
Definitely not.
I feel safe now. I do. I don't go on the subway.
That's a real New York experience.
Somebody spit on my face in the train.
Random person?
Yeah, just like someone randomly.
Do you think he should be put in prison?
I don't know if he should be put in prison. I definitely think that, maybe like slap a fine on him or something like.
But if you just fine him, he might just go spit in another young woman's face.
True.
Do you think that we need broken windows policy again, like under Giuliani?
My car was parked here on this street, which is a safe street, and somebody stole my catalytic converter.
Did they ever catch the individual?
No, nobody's going to catch anybody. And it cost me $1,900 to replace it.
You say more police, not less.
Yeah, more police, definitely more police.
More police, in my opinion, yeah, more police. More police everywhere.
It's a lot of, a bunch of stuff just happened in the Bronx.
The police does such a great job. Last thing you want to is lower their budget.
Okay, here's a thought. Zohran Mamdani knew he was going to do this all along. He jacked the budget up by $11 billion. Think about it. Infinity's next.